Hello, everybody. I have here with me today Mr. Ed from Lean English Pronunciation. So, how are you today, my friends?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you. Thanks very much for having me on your channel.
So, why did you pick this name? Let's start there.
So the original name of my channel was called Rude English.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and when I first started the channel, I started making videos about everything, really, everything related to
Mm-hmm.
English language. But especially like initially I was focusing on slang and idioms, vocabulary, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. So I kind of called it rude English because it's kind of, I felt like I was teaching things that aren't usually taught or
Mm-hmm.
non-standard English,
Mm-hmm.
basically.
Mm-hmm.
But my channel has changed quite a lot since I
Yeah.
first started.
Mm-hmm.
Now I just focus on pronunciation. And
Mm-hmm.
so about a year ago, I decided that the name wasn't really accurate or appropriate. It didn't
Mm-hmm.
really reflect
Mm-hmm.
what content I produce on my channel. So
Yeah.
I changed it to Lean English
Mm-hmm.
Pronunciation, and
Mm-hmm.
English pronunciation is obvious. It's because I teach pronunciation on my channel.
Yeah.
And Lean is a bit random, but it's because I was
Mm-hmm.
at the time I was reading about something called lean manufacturing, which is a manufacturing process which is very efficient. It focuses on just the
Mm-hmm.
most important elements to produce things quickly and
Yes.
efficiently, and that's kind of what I try to do when I teach pronunciation, both with my students and on my YouTube
Mm-hmm.
channel. I focus on, the real important stuff, the most essential things, so that students can make rapid progress, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it's probably a reference which not everybody gets straight away. And
Mm-hmm.
definitely when you look at it quickly, lots of people think it says learn, but yeah, it's actually lean English
Yeah.
pronunciation, and that's why I gave it that name.
Why do you think students don't care very much about learning the proper pronunciation or speaking the best way they can?
um, it's a good question.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly why some
Mm-hmm.
students don't
Yeah.
really care.
Mm-hmm.
The only reason I can imagine is because they don't really understand how
Mm-hmm.
important it is
Mm-hmm.
for speaking another language.
Yeah.
Because actually it's probably the most important thing about a language.
Mm-hmm.
You can communicate with
Yeah.
very little knowledge of grammar or vocabulary. If I
Mm-hmm.
say the word hungry, you probably know that I'm hungry. Okay, I
Yeah.
don't really need a verb or anything like
Yeah.
that. Um, but you can have excellent grammar, excellent vocabulary, but if your
Yeah.
pronunciation is really bad, then effectively communication just breaks down completely.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So, what would be the tool that you would use to convince a student to study pronunciation?
um, it's a good question. I think I think something that language students don't do enough of is to actually listen to themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's really good idea for any language student to record themselves and listen to
Mm-hmm.
themselves and
Mm-hmm.
compare it to a native speaker, just so that they can hear the different sounds, the different rhythm, the different intonation, and see how it
Yeah.
compares. And I think if students took a step back and actually compared their own pronunciation to others,
Mm-hmm.
they might become more aware of the differences and how those differences can
Mm-hmm.
affect communication. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I did my homework and I have to say that your channel is amazing. I
Thank
started
you.
binge watching your channel because I loved all the videos. the way you teach pronunciation on social media, you are an asset for those who want to learn about pronunciation. And I thank you for that. The TH in Brazil doesn't exist. We don't have that sound, the voiced and unvoiced sounds. So they try to find a approximate sound to those, and they say thank you or thank you. And I have to find ways to teach them how to create the sound. And that for me is amazing. When I found your channel, I said, he's really good. And what is a memorable moment as a teacher for you that you could share with us?
I mean, yeah, I think I've had similar moments to that really. Very frequently with the TH sounds, which you just described.
Yeah.
Lots of students simply aren't aware of how they're pronounced or how they're produced. And they often map those sounds onto sounds that already exist in their own language. So they produce F sounds or V sounds or T or D sounds. And so, yeah, some of the most memorable moments are just explaining this to students. And because it literally opens their eyes, they really weren't aware that there's such a difference for them. The sounds were exactly the same, like the T's and the D's are the same as the TH sounds. So yeah, sometimes just explaining it to them and seeing the look of amazement, and even further than that, some similar situations, explaining processes that happen in connected speech. So like elision, for example, when we remove sounds at the end of words. I remember students explaining how when they were learning English for the first time, they were so proud that they could finally produce these consonant clusters at the end of words. And then I told them that actually that's not necessary. Native speakers don't do that. We just remove the sounds. And then they say things like, "Oh wow, it's like learning to walk again," basically.
It's really amazing. How could we convince a student to study and learn pronunciation in a very deep way? What would be your advice?
So if I'm trying to convince a student of the importance, maybe I would suggest they think about people who learn Portuguese as a second language, for example. So what do they think of British people or American people or you know, anyone else who learns Portuguese as a second language? What do they think of their accent? Do they think they have good pronunciation? Do some of them sound silly in their opinion because maybe their pronunciation is very bad? So maybe think about people who are learning your own language and see how that can compare to when you learn English. I mean, if you think bad pronunciation sometimes sounds silly, do you want to risk sounding silly when you speak English? Or if you struggle to understand people who are speaking Portuguese as a second language, do you want to be in that situation as well?
My students, they are very afraid of making mistakes. But I am a native and I make mistakes in Portuguese every day. Sometimes they are afraid to speak because they're making mistakes. And I tell them, you learn from your mistakes. How can you come up with such a brilliant content on your social medias? Because your work is flawless, man. Congratulations.
Yeah, well, thank you. I mean, yeah, other people have asked me that question before. They're surprised that I can create so much content just about pronunciation. But really, you can go into so much detail about pronunciation, and to be honest, about any subject, pronunciation is exactly the same. I could probably go into more detail if I wanted to, but you know, it gets to a point where it's not really necessary. It's not really practical. And yeah, I mean, I'm still learning about pronunciation. I read books about it. I'm constantly learning, and I'm constantly generating ideas as well, because I'm constantly learning new things. Or, you know, my students are a constant inspiration as well, or a source of ideas, because I see patterns. I see several students struggling with the same things, and so that gives me an idea for a video. Yeah, I think it's, when you start looking in detail at pronunciation, actually it's a massive subject, and it's not really difficult to,
I agree. How long does
ideas.
it take you to make a video?
It varies depending on the complexity of the video. In the past, I think 8 hours was probably standard from start to finish. I mean, from like writing a script to finally uploading it. But it is hard, because I'm teaching full time at the same time, so it's hard to find 8 hours sometimes. So I'm trying to I guess simplify the process, simplify the content a bit, just to make it easier for me, but also to make it more accessible, because I do go into a lot of detail in some videos, and I worry that sometimes that might alienate people who don't really have a knowledge of phonetics or phonology. So yeah, 8 hours, but I'm trying to reduce it, and now sometimes maybe 6 or 4 hours, depending on the video.
I agree. We can consider both of us nitpickers. We like to do the best that we can, you know. What was the most challenging moment as far as teaching pronunciation is concerned for you?
Well, I think the challenge for teachers more generally is that during normal teacher training, when you learn to teach English, to be an English teacher, you're not really taught how to correct pronunciation problems. You usually get you know, a brief overview of phonemic symbols and the sounds, things like linking, so that at least you can focus on like specific sounds in your classes. But sometimes that's not enough. So, for example, the way I really got into pronunciation was because when I was just I guess a normal teacher, a normal English teacher, teaching grammar and everything, it was quite common that a student would pronounce a word wrong. Like, I don't know, book, for example, they would pronounce bok. And I would say, no, it's book. And I'd ask them to repeat it, and they'd still repeat it wrong. And so what do you do in that situation? Because I'd run out of ideas, basically. Like my training didn't tell me how to correct these kind of problems. Yeah, I think that's a problem for English teachers in general, and that's why I really started to look in depth at how to correct these problems and essentially teach myself those skills.
Awesome, man, you're awesome. I don't even know what to say. I am considered a redneck in Brazil because I live in the countryside. So we have the retroflex. The word door, for example, in Portuguese is porta. Okay, so in Rio accent, they say porta. In São Paulo accent, they say porta. And where I live, we say porta. So we have the door accent. So when I teach a student from São Paulo, for example, they have a hard time saying work. It's really funny. But let me ask you one other thing. And now you fully dedicate yourself to T pronunciation, or you teach other abilities of English as well?
Yeah, now I generally just teach pronunciation.
Awesome.
Yeah, initially I taught everything, but I just gradually slid into this sort of speciality, I suppose. The more confident I got at teaching it, the more I seemed to find students who wanted to learn it. So now I just specialize in pronunciation, accent reduction. Obviously in my classes it depends on the students. Some need to practice things like grammar, so it depends on the student, but yeah, sometimes I do grammar and vocabulary and things like that as well.
We can play a little bit because I can teach you how to say some words in Portuguese, because we don't have that sound in English. And now you're going to understand why my students have so many problems with some sounds. Like the word hand in Portuguese is mão. Can you produce that sound? Can you say mão?
I think so. Mão.
Yeah, the future of teaching will be remote learning or hybrid learning or in-person learning.
Yes, another good question. Definitely the world is moving towards more hybrid or completely remote learning. I think we as humans, we always prefer human contact if possible. So I don't think, we will be completely remote, but for lots of people it's difficult to I don't know, just to find a good English teacher in their town, depending on where they live. Or yeah, so that for them it may be the only option to learn online. But yeah, I think definitely in the future it will become more of a mix of hybrid and remote learning. Yeah.
And the last question before the rapid round game that we have on the channel and I play with every single guest is if you had the chance to meet with your own self 5 or 10 years ago, what would you tell yourself?
Quite a lot of things, to be honest. Well, I would probably encourage myself to start learning languages earlier, because in the UK, unfortunately, languages, they're not given much importance in education. So I studied French and German and Latin at school, but I can't remember any of it because as students you just don't really care that much, and it's not really encouraged. But it wasn't until I was about 25 years old that I actually regretted it, and I decided I wanted to learn a language, so I started learning Spanish.
Wow.
And yeah, that really opened up new opportunities. And yeah, it was one of the best decisions I've made. So I would encourage myself to really start learning languages more
I can teach you Portuguese if you want to. It's pretty close to Spanish, so I can teach you Portuguese. It's really cool.
Yeah, actually, I didn't say earlier, but I'm learning Portuguese at the moment. So.
Oh, nice. So we can practice Portuguese once a week, if you want.
Yeah.
So you speak English and Spanish for now, or you speak any other language as well? You're studying Portuguese, right? So that's why you said mão so good.
Yeah.
Because you're learning. Yeah.
I didn't say anything earlier, but yeah, the first thing I learned when I started studying Portuguese was those nasal sounds.
Yeah, the nasal sounds, which are a nightmare for English learners, a nightmare for those who want to learn Portuguese as well, So, okay, so now we're going to start the rapid round game, and I'm going to ask you the questions. So teaching English is
worthwhile.
the most beautiful word in English for me is
little.
right.
If you want an explanation, I don't know why. I think I just like the way it's written in you know, in calligraphy. If someone has nice handwriting, it's just lots of nice lines next to each other.
I agree. My friends are
indispensable.
my family is
interesting.
the most beautiful word in Spanish for me is
that's very difficult. Pan.
teaching English at such a high level as I do is
very challenging but rewarding.
awesome. The future will be
better than the present, I hope.
if I had to describe myself in one word, that word would be
motivated.
awesome. Now I go on the hot seat and you can ask me whatever you want.
Do you prefer hot or cold weather?
Cold weather.
Are you a morning or an evening person? Do you prefer waking up late? Or
when you have kids to support, you know, I have a 14-year-old and a preschooler, a 5-year-old. You have to wake up in the morning and start working, even though you don't like it, you know.
Yeah.
But I would be an evening person for sure.
Okay.
You know.
What's your favorite English accent?
I don't know how to answer that. I think that the humor of British people and how you are so available to us, it's amazing, you know.
Great. What about Portuguese accents? What's your favorite Portuguese accent?
I think I like the standard pronunciation accent. I think it's really beautiful, but I love accents actually.
So related to that, I suppose, in a way, if you had to, or if you wanted to learn another language, what would it be?
French.
Okay.
But I am crazy about English.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes it so interesting is that yeah, it's spoken all over the world, and it's incredidly varied. It's very interesting. Yeah. So what would your advice be to someone who struggles with English pronunciation?
Never give up. Talk out loud. Speak the words as many times as you need, and never give up, because when you learn the proper way to say something, it's priceless. But the main thing is consistency and never giving up.
Yeah.
Well, to finish, I always have a sentence, a quote to take away for every guest. And for you is, doesn't matter if it's after. What matters is that we have, as you say, a universal language where most of the times, if we speak from the heart, we don't have to be afraid to make any mistake. So please keep going with your wonderful job. I am already subscribed to you and all your social medias. Your work is flawless. And whenever you decide to come down to Brazil to visit me, just let me know. You'll be very welcome here. All right?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for having me on your channel. It's really great what you're doing, bringing lots of English teachers and students together.
Thank you so
it's a really
much.
great place. Yeah,
Your words are so kind. Thank you so much.
No, thank
Well,
you.
this was my friend Ed from Lean English Pronunciation. It was an amazing conversation. I would have a conversation with him for 5, 6 hours because I love this subject. And it was a pleasure to have you on the channel. Do you have any last words?
Just thank you again, and yeah, keep doing what you're doing. It's like I said, it's really great. So I've really enjoyed the conversation, and I've learned a lot. So yeah, hopefully we can do it again sometime.
Yeah. Well, guys, I hope you liked it as much as I did. All his details are going to be in the description box down below. Please follow him. See you next week. Thank you. See you later.
Bye.
Hello, it's Rod's friend here, Gino from Real Everyday English. Sorry for interrupting your video. I just want to make a quick recommendation that you subscribe to Rodrigo's channel. He's an amazing guy, he's so humble, he's so dedicated, and he creates absolutely fantastic content. See you people soon. Bye bye, God bless.